CNN had an insane panel. Van actually defended my honor on the panel, but that didn't make it into the clip for some strange reason. But you know, apparently this CNN panelist was suggesting that El Sayed campaigning with me is potentially worse and more depraved than the president having dinner with Nick Fuentes. Okay, we'll start here.
I'd say that
I don't know if we have the full. I don't know if we have the full clip somewhere, but
the populist MAGA message has resonated with plenty of people, and for much the same reason, I think some of the DSA style, communist style, not communist, that's unfair, but DSA style rhetoric has resonated with plenty of people as well. But I do think, just going back for briefly, not all the way in, I'm sorry, Abby, but briefly, I mean, Van, you weren't so much defending the candidate. You were doing this thing that we'd become accustomed to calling whataboutism. I thought the president had these bad affiliations. It does seem totally appropriate to address El Sayed's politics and proposals, but also to address his affiliations. And the affiliation with Hassan Piker is one that strikes me as particularly odd. Nick Fuentes is someone who is a vile, awful character in our politics, but he's also not someone who I've seen any prominent Republican aspirant or elected official like palling around with regularly. There was that conversation about Donald Trump having lunch with him.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Kanye brought him to the dinner. And for the most part, but honestly, for the most part, you've only heard prominent Republicans repudiating him. I do think the permission structure on the left gives me some concern. Well, no, what I want to put on the table is that we are engaging in this pretty foul calculus of trying to figure out who is actually worse, because our politics and
like it's unbelievable what liberalism does to the mind, because Nick Fuentes is like anti-miscegenation. Nick Fuentes is quite literally compared a white person hooking up with a black person to a white person hooking up with an animal. Like, he said that it's akin, miscegenation is akin to bestiality. So like that comparison is so far-fetched. And I don't know why people try to make that comparison. I mean, I guess I understand it, because like it's literally probably shit that they've seen, like clips that they've seen. And if that's like their first interaction with my commentary, maybe they think I'm like incendiary in a similar manner. But it is such an unbelievably bad faith statement to make.
I'm delighted to see a moral center has where the president is and who the president.
Why is the clip not working? We got to find it. No sane person would say something like that. CNN debate goes off the rails after Israel and Hamas comparison. Camilla Foster was a former Fox News. Oh, they're a former Fox News business commentator. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, it's just like totally unfair. It's totally inaccurate. And it's not even like Nick Fuentes. I think the more apt comparison would probably be myself and Charlie Kirk, which is one that like at least this industry had presented us as opposing figures and peers. And even then, I think Charlie Kirk's view is far more odious than anything they could present, unless they're like Republican, unless someone is a reactionary Republican, a fascist. You're probably not going to look at the totality of my worldview and then compare it to Charlie Kirk's and say Hasan is just as bad or worse. And what's crazy is for some liberals, they're literally now making the comparison that I'm worse than Charlie Kirk, which I find very strange. Like Charlie Kirk has literally said, like, if he sees a black woman piloting an aircraft, like he's unsafe. He knows he's unsafe. Like that is an unbelievably racist position to have. Charlie Kirk is anti-civil rights movement. Charlie Kirk is anti-voting rights act. Like this is not a fair comparison at all. The only difference is like what Charlie is saying is considered radical by, you know, emotionally sound and kind-hearted individuals who have been able to maintain their sanity in spite of the barrage of reactionary media. But for the most part, it is more broadly representative of how insane the conservative movement is, how insane the conservative movement has become. Like that kind of commentary is normalizing the conservative side, but there's no moral equivalence between my worldview and that. Do you understand? Like I even opposed. I used to oppose the Charlie Kirk comparison because he's a party stooge and he's like genuinely a racist. Was a genuinely racist person, right? There's no moral equivalence on the left. There's no moral equivalence on the left. You can't just sit there and say like, oh, well, socialism and fascism are two sides of the same coin. Like, you're a fucking insane person. There's higher degrees of socialization in many other countries. In the interim period, many of the DSA candidates are basically pushing for social democracy, social democratic provisions. And these provisions are unbelievably popular. The Democratic Socialists of America's goals of changing American society and American politics is through the electoral route for the most part. Obviously, there's hurdles in front of it, but like regardless, nothing that we are advocating for overall, by and large, is dangerous or scary or even remotely unpopular. Right? Longer archived raw clip.
Condemnation of an attempted terrorist attack on a Michigan synagogue that would have killed 140 Jewish children without condemning Israel in the very same sentence, and like the fact that he pals around with Hassan Piker, who he can't condemn, but who has said the United States deserved 9/11 and maybe people should murder Senator Rick Scott.
Yeah, bullshit. Anyway.
Now, he said he apologized for that, but only because he was kicked off social media for saying you should kill a sitting Republican office holder. All of that is fair game. This guy's a very damaged candidate.
And the father-in-law, one of the biggest donors to the campaign and the biggest boosters, is a founding member of an organization that has been investigated for funneling money to the Muslim Brotherhood on the way to Hamas. I mean, these are really crazy, crazy things. And I think it's fair to ask questions about all of them, just like you would someone Trump's campaigning with, just like anyone is campaigning with. We would all say scrutinize them, and that's what this is. I think it's fair.
Is it? Wow. I'm delighted to see a moral center has been found, man. Because like,
wait, how do we find where those clips are? Like, how do we find where the continuation of those clips are? I don't know how to like move
and
to
pass
the
Medicare for all. I think a lot of Michiganders want that right now.
I thought you guys were the party of Laura Loomer. I thought it was Steve.
Not me. I would say the same thing about those people.
What I would say, though, to me is that, like, you know, when I look around not at who the president has surrounded himself with, who the president is and who the president has empowered, and some of the things that these people have said and done, I think it's best if we kind of get the pearl clutching out of the way.
Did I say Van Jones defended me earlier? I'm sorry, it was Van Lathan. Van Jones would never defend me. Van Jones despises me.
And concentrate on the policy because
pearl
I
clutching
Hamas
and Israel on the same moral footing. That's pearl clutching.
Well,
no
I mean,
sane.
I think you're wrong, but not for the ways that you think you're delivering a point here. No, you said Van. People added Jones. Oh, okay. I don't think I said Van
would
Jones.
say something like that and not.
Well, then I'm very insane because this is what I'll say. I'll say that a lot of people are looking at Israel and its actions since October 7th and don't see a moral footing for them to stand on and criticize anyone. A lot of people are looking at dead children.
That's Hassan Piker's view. That there's no moral distinction between Israel and Hamas.
Well,
No, there is one. There is one. One is worse. The country that is committing a genocide, that has occupied Palestinian territories for 80 plus years, the country that began at its inception with an act of ethnic cleansing, is worse. Hamas is the last iteration of Palestinian resistance. Okay? And regardless of the war crimes, if you look at the totality of Israel's violence and the totality of the Palestinian resistance violence in retaliation to Zionist violence early on and then Israeli violence afterwards, it's not even a comparison. And it's not just my assessment. This is the assessment of Gabor Mate, for example. Like, there are plenty of people who, there are the overwhelming majority of academics understand, and even international law technically understands this reality. People make it seem as though this is just my expression that is so far-fetched. It is you that is far-fetched in this circumstance. It is you that is out of touch. You're out of touch with the reality. You're out of touch with an understanding of the humanity of the Palestinians, with the expectation that Palestinians are always going to sit there and eat it. You know, it's just totally ridiculous.
say yes.
But
Yes.
Republicans are thrilled to litigate that issue.
That's fine. I'm glad. I'm glad.
Are they? I don't think they are. Because if they were thrilled to litigate that issue, that would be the issue that they're putting up at the forefront of their conversation. And that conversation would not go well for them at all.
You guys are thrilled. I'm glad that you find joy. We should all have joy in life. But what I'm saying is there are a lot of
I wish they would have me on to talk about my takes rather than have people try to defend them. And Van does a pretty decent job here. All I'm saying is, like, you know, I am capable of communicating my worldview fairly well, and I could do it in this setting. I don't know why they're so worried about it. Like, do they think that I'm just going to start like slurring or whatever? I don't know.
Right now, that over the last couple of years have looked at pictures of emaciated children. They know that children have been dismembered, incinerated, bombed, journalists being killed, and they're not just, they don't agree with you. And so you're going to have to make a case to those people, not how bad they are for not being able to see a moral distinction.
And you'll have to make a case to the
to
Jewish voters who care about the same things happening to kids in Israel.
I hate to break up.
Same thing's happening to kids in Israel. Kids in Israel are starving due to famine, born out of the Hamas blockade or the Palestinian occupation of Israel. What kind of fucking idiotic comparison is this? It doesn't, there is no similarity to the totality of violence in the hands of one party against the other party. It's just not
Up this foreign
bullshit.
policy
It's
discussion.
delusional. And if the counter for all of this stuff is like, oh, well, we just don't want to give you a platform. Well, I have a literal competitive platform to CNN. Okay. And for the demographic that all of these guys are desperately fighting for, I have a far larger platform for the 18 to 35 demographic than they do. So that platforming argument is actually super silly. It's silly when people yell at me over it as well, when they're like, oh, you're platforming this person, that person. It's like, I don't traffic in those kinds of narratives, with some exceptions. They have to be an unbelievably exceptionally bad person for me to think about like that.
What about the economy?
Because
I'm not saying that flippantly. I'm just saying, you know, there is a hierarchy of needs here for the American people. And I don't think there's really any question that at the top of that list is the economy. And there are all these things you could say about El Sayed and a lot of these other candidates. But one of the big reasons that these messages, whether you call them socialist or not, are working is because people feel like the system is broken. It ain't working for them.
Yeah.
They are not bringing home enough money.
I'd say
Hold on. Then this guy starts chirping about
I'd say
me.
that the populist MAGA message has resonated with plenty of people, and for much the same reason, I think some of the DSA style, communist style, not communist, that's unfair, but DSA style rhetoric has resonated with plenty of people as well. But I do think, just going back for briefly, not all the way in, I'm sorry, Abby, but briefly, I mean, Van, you weren't so much defending the candidate. You were doing this thing that we've become accustomed to calling whataboutism. I thought the president had these bad affiliations. It does seem totally appropriate to address El Sayed's politics and proposals, but also to address his affiliations. And the affiliation with Hasan Piker is one that strikes me as particularly odd. Nick Fuentes is someone who is a vile, awful character in our politics, but he's also not someone who I've seen any prominent Republican aspirant or elected official like palling around with regularly. There was
Yes, because Nick Fuentes is an open neo-Nazi. I feel like there are a lot of people in mainstream media, people who self-identify as liberals, or people who are conservative, or people who just like are terrified of, you know, socialism, whatever, that try to do this like blanket both sides are bad statement. Nick Fuentes not only had dinner with Donald Trump, but like the other side of the story is this almost makes it seem like Donald Trump is a less repulsive figure in American politics than me. Okay? And if you have that take, you're a fucking psychopath. Like, it's not even Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is obviously an edge case. Okay? But we're talking about like the broader Republican Party. Like, you really think I'm a worse figure than the Republican Party? You have to get, like, I can't think of anything that they would see to be as odious as like anything that Donald Trump has done beyond like, I guess, Israel related takes. And if that's the case, if that is the case, if like Israel is that powerful of a motivator for you to say, oh, this guy is saying like, you know, Hamas is 1,000 times better than Israel. That I think is like worse than Nick Fuentes even. Like that's not only not worse than Nick Fuentes, that doesn't even come close to anything that Donald Trump has done or anything that the average Republican has done. You have to literally fucking snap out of it. You have to completely snap out of it, dude. What the fuck? These people are delusional. They are completely fucking delusional. Charlie Kirk was infinitely more incendiary than what I have, than anything that I have said or done. It's crazy. I think these guys are all so servile to not only corporate interests, but the interests of Israel, it seems, that they just like say these unbearable things that are totally ridiculous to the average person, right? And I tweeted about this as well. I said, I don't believe the average American thinks taxing the rich, Medicare for all, no longer sending money or weapons to Israel, banning corporate PACs, conditional amnesty for migrants, and ICE abolition is worse than a neo-Nazi platform of Holocaust denial, anti-miscegenation, and concentration camps. It makes no sense. Democrats and independents are far more likely to agree with my policy, with my platforms, with our policy and our platforms than anything that Nick Fuentes represents. It's totally ridiculous. And the same even goes for MAGA. It's not even just like the edge cases of Nick Fuentes where you could say that is a fucking neo-Nazi and move on. I'm talking about like MAGA in general. There are so many liberals that are trying to motivate the base, even though they have none, into believing in this false notion that there is any kind of equivocation between socialists, democratic socialists, and neo-Nazis, or even democratic socialists and MAGA. There is none. And some of these quote-unquote liberals actually openly state their purpose is with MAGA. If there was push come to shove, if there was a situation where someone was voting for me, instead of voting for like Marco Rubio, they would vote for Marco Rubio. That means you are not a part of the coalition. You're not. That means that you're only comfortable moving the tent rightward, which is precisely at the heart of the problem with the modern Democratic Party. That establishment Democrats are far too comfortable leaning to the right, but never want to open up the tent to their left. We are the base. We are closer to the broad majority's point of view. Our policies are objectively popular and good. Theirs are odious. Theirs are disgusting. They're repulsive. That's it. There's no moral equivalence between democratic socialism or even communism, really, with what fascism represents. Okay? None whatsoever. And the modern Republican Party is a fascist party.
Is that conversation about Donald Trump having lunch with him?
Yeah, that was
Kanye,
what
are you talking about? Kanye brought him to the dinner. I'd say that the populist MAGA message, communist, to address El Said's politics and proposals, but also to address his affiliations. And the affiliation with Hasan Piker is one that strikes me as particularly. But for the most part, but honestly, for the most part, you've only heard prominent Republicans repudiating him. I do think the permission structure on the left gives me some concern.
Now, listen to what my friend, I'll just go ahead and say this guy's my friend. But listen to what this guy just did. The President of the United States had dinner with the most prominent white supremacists right now in the entire world.
I'm not dismissing.
You did dismiss it.
No, I brought it up.
Wait a second. No.
Yeah.
You did dismiss it. What you did was you attempted very artfully to skirt over it in order to talk about Hasan Piker with a prospective Senate candidate when the president in some way found himself at a dinner table with an avowed white supremacist.
Can I go a little further?
And actually didn't kick him out.
Didn't kick him out.
Let me just go a little further.
This is the type of dissonance that we're dealing with.
What I want to put on the table
Just constantly name dropping. I live for it. Yeah, it's just, it's so. It's so disingenuous. It's so insincere.
Is that we are engaging in this pretty foul calculus of trying to figure out who is actually worse, because our politics and the culture surrounding it are so depraved. But there is a real question about whether or not that depravity is being tolerated in ways that should concern us.
Thank you for 20 gifted.
I mean, I asked Bernie Sanders about this week, and he basically said that the whole anti-Hasan Piker thing is cancel culture.
Oh.
And that Democrats need to have a big tent, that it's not about him endorsing everything that Hasan Piker believes.
That's incredible.
I'm just to put that out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the view. Abdul El Sayed was asked about it on Wednesday. Let me just play briefly what he said.
I'm less focused on folks who are campaigning with me, more focused on the folks I'm campaigning to. And I think it's important to stay in touch with the folks who you want to elect you.
I just...
A little unclear who he's talking about staying in touch. Staying in touch with, but but I mean, he knows there's a constituency among younger people in particular for what Hasan Piker talks about, and I will also say that's not unique to the left, right? This is something going on the right too. So yeah, I mean, this is what we're seeing.
Yeah, but I think that's really stupid.
Look, here's the reality, okay? There is an established permission structure in mainstream news. I've talked about it for years, and it's really interesting that we are finally in a situation where I can point to it. There's a permission structure for what you are allowed to say in mainstream outlets, okay? If you go outside of that permission structure, you are immediately in the danger zone. And you can go outside of that permission structure to the left, and you can certainly go outside of that permission structure to the right. Now, there's a lot less of the no-no zone on the right because the Overton window has shifted so dramatically to the right because Donald Trump is the president, right? And for years and years, there's also been like a more structural allowance for right-wing sentiment because right-wing sentiment doesn't disrupt the corporate hierarchy that exists under capitalism. It's oftentimes beneficial, right? Like, one example I can give you is the permission for Islamophobia, the way that Islamophobia was used as a tool to justify the global war on terror, right? For 2 decades, 3 decades almost. That creates a permission for being as Islamophobic as you want to in very open and very flagrant ways and still be able to go on television and say whatever the fuck you want, okay? So on the far right, there are very few people that are outside of that permission structure. Nick Fuentes is one of them, right? Nick Fuentes is one of those guys. It's like there are very few. Alex Jones is another one. Nick Fuentes is another one. But on the left, there is an entire mountain of thought that doesn't get any that doesn't get any airtime and is not considered like serious and is only covered cynically. Okay? Is only covered cynically. And that's the problem. Just because someone is outside of the neat confines of the liberal permission structure doesn't mean that there is moral equivalence between leftist thought and rightist thought. Okay? This is something that these people cannot comprehend. Yes, my job, the way I see my position in American media and international media, is to move the permission structure further to the left so there's a little bit more normalcy in the way that we cover these issues, especially because my worldview is not only not as repulsive, toxic, or odious as those on the far right, but it's also very popular overall. Just because it gets no discussion, no serious discussion in mainstream outlets doesn't mean that there isn't an opportunity or an outlet for this kind of discussion. And my popularity, our popularity on the independent media side proves that reality. One example you can use is Israel. If you were to look at the totality of mainstream discourse on Israel, even now, they are totally out of step with where the base is. Okay? They're totally out of step. Who do you think is closer to the mass expression when it comes to this issue on Israel? Myself or Jake Tapper, right? Someone like, someone over at Drop Site News or someone over at CNN, someone over at MSNBC. Now, that's by design. The real reason why there's tension now and this whole conversation revolves around the radical nature of the leftist thought, radical nature of the DSA, radical nature of Hasan Piker. The only reason why this discourse is happening is because there's this friction where we in the media side, we on left media have become an undeniable force. And not only have we become an undeniable force in discourse, because obviously a lot of people have left mainstream media due to the crisis in credibility in mainstream news, largely because of their coverage on Israel, for example. We've also started, throwing our weight around a little bit more meaningfully. And we've seen a bunch of big victories against moneyed interests, against corporate interests, against the system as it was designed, against establishment Democrats. And that is the reason why there's so much panic. And instead of trying to identify where the people are, these people are trying to engage in a disciplining operation. They're trying to say, look, we can't yell about the voters feeling this way, but we can try to separate media figures from the voters to make it seem like these media figures don't have their own base. They don't have their own audiences, that they're not actually captivating people, right? And even blue sky liberals are seemingly getting on board with the program. The more the centrists hand-wring and whine about Piker and progressive values, the more they look like nice fascists. People want human rights and freedom already. How is this hard? Yeah. And then immediately because there's so much content of me out there. There's so much hatred and animosity that is boiled over on the independent media side as well, for my position as the arch leftist in independent discourse. There's a laundry list of attack hits, now the ones that the Republicans are deploying, that many others can deploy to be like, well, I'm a progressive and I fucking hate Hasan. And if you scratch the surface of that commentary, you'll realize that person is not very progressive at all, right? Either they completely misunderstand my position on China, for example, or completely misrepresent my position on Russia and Ukraine, where they'll say I'm pro-Russia when I'm not, or they're just not progressive at all, and they're just straight up lying to other people to make themselves seem like they're actually progressive, make themselves seem like they're actually leftist.
There is a very online constituency for a lot of this stuff. The notion that it manifests in political objectives, political goals, electoral goals, is really the jury's out on that one. To your point about the economy earlier.
For the record, if the jury was out on that, you would never talk about this. That's the difference. If the jury was out on that, you would never bring me up. Why would you ever bring me up? This would only benefit me, right? Like from your perspective, if I was like an irrelevant guy who's just yelling to a tiny minuscule audience that has that doesn't represent a real political force, then you would never have to talk about it. This is the problem. There is no faction that is more in a bubble right now than the Abdul al-Sayed needs to distance himself from Hasan Piker crowd. Piker has probably been more effective in this election season than any other singular person, and candidates attacking him have fallen on their face every time. Candidates that he has campaigned with this cycle: Chris Rabb, Adam Hamawi, Claire Valdez, Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier, Albert Kawas, Samantha Catan, Christian Celeste Tate, David Orkin, Ian Huntley, Iapa Saria Tupac, Melak Heroes, Abdul al-Sayed, Donovan McKinney. In every group chat of media members and DC consultants and establishment Dem electeds, it is settled science that Hasan is a toxic anti-Semite. He must be denounced. In the real world, few know who he is, but he brings a small army of enthusiastic volunteers, donators, and voters. I'm not even a Piker partisan. I don't watch his content and honestly don't even know that much about him. What I do know is that he now gets attacked a couple dozen times a week in mainstream press and appears in attack ads, yet he continues to show remarkable success in boosting candidates. These people have lost their minds in reference to the CNN panelists suggesting El-Sayed is doing a worse job by campaigning with me than the president eating dinner with Nick Fuentes. The morning shows have their eye on the most important issue today, Hasan Piker. Yeah. Like, the people of the United States of America are currently in a defensive posture, basically waging war against the fascist administration that is occupying blue cities and blue states with ICE, an unaccountable, unelected secret police force that has murdered Americans, that has kidnapped our neighbors. And mainstream media over here is consistently fucking talking about Hasan Piker. They are dropping the ball again. I am explaining this one more time to you, okay? Just as they dropped the ball on Israel, just as they've dropped the ball on Trump's madness, Trump's violence, Trump's corruption, they're dropping the ball one more time. For the average person, eventually they're going to get sick and tired of this obsessive Hasan Piker this, Hasan Piker that critique. They're going to demand more from mainstream outlets. They're going to want to hear about how the economy is in fucking tatters, how the Iran war is a spectacular quagmire that is destroying the energy markets around the globe. This kind of disciplining operation is going to run its course. Okay? I said this a couple months ago when they tried to do this as Trump was deciding to go to war with Iran. Anytime the Trump administration is fucking up in spectacular fashion, the media almost in unison collectively decides to get their notes from Fox News. And Fox News should not be the domineering news editor for the rest of liberal media. And yet, liberal media, these outlets that are supposed to be impartial, unbiased, supposed to be covering the news adequately, get their fucking notes from Fox News. This is a huge problem. Fox News knows that CNN is going to lead with whatever the fuck Fox News is deciding is going to be the main story of the day. That is the problem. Of course, Fox News is going to try to make a mountain out of a molehill with my affiliations with campaigns because they can't talk about the fucking economy. They can't talk about the spectacular failure of Donald Trump's immigration agenda. They can't talk about the fact that Donald Trump is destroying the country. Of course, they're not going to talk about it. They're not going to talk about the Epstein files, right? You cannot let Rupert Murdoch set the agenda for American news this hard. That's the problem, right? That's where this comes from. Fox News knows that they can't talk about how devastating the Donald Trump has been for America this time around, especially. So they really tune up the culture war frequency, right? And then MS Now, CNN, all these fucking liberals in the commentariat, all the fucking Beltway pundits, they also go, oh my God, they're freaking out about this thing. Now we have to take a defensive posture and capitulate to their whims. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. People don't want to fucking hear this shit. Drive discourse in the direction that you want it to be in. And perhaps for many, CNN and MS Now and ABC and CBS, they want discourse to be captured in the right-wing centric toxic media landscape instead of one where we're talking about the shit that Donald Trump is actually doing to America and Americans. And I'm pretty sure boomers are eventually going to start getting tired of this too. They're going to be like, why the fuck do we care about this guy? He just has like young voters who are getting excited to go out and fucking vote. Like, why are we constantly talking about this? I'm having a hard time making ends meet. My children, my grandchildren are never going to be able to own a home. That's a huge problem. That's what Americans care about, not this fucking bullshit. It's deeply unserious. It's deeply unserious. It doesn't fucking work. It's very silly. And I think that inevitably more and more people are going to get sick and tired of fucking hearing my name. So don't fucking capitulate to this shit at all. Because I see sometimes there are people who are like on the social democratic side who are, hearing all of these attack ads and going, you know what, actually, I guess they have some credibility, these attack ads. I guess the easiest thing to do is just like cut our losses here and move on. There are some weak-willed people, and what they fail to comprehend is that they are falling victim to the trap that the Republicans are setting. Okay? I am not a pivotal figure in American elections. I'm not saying that at all. I play my role, and it's a tiny role. Okay? It's a tiny, but albeit significant role. It's a calculation that all of these campaigns have made, and they've leaned into this bet, and they've won as a consequence of it, right? But the reason why the Republican media is actively using me as this like figurehead, actively saying like, these are the worst clips that we could find, this guy's a real piece of shit, you need to disavow him, is so that they can defang left media, independent left media. Do you understand? That's their goal. So if you're even a little bit smart about this, even if you don't like me, even if you don't agree with me, if you're a liberal, understand that the right-wing opposition to this stuff, the right-wing opposition to the place I hold in the left flank as an independent media figure, that is a real threat to corporate interests in this country, okay? If you're a liberal and you think I'm your enemy and it's not MAGA and you're getting your notes from MAGA, you need to wake the fuck up to the reality. Okay? The reality is they understand what the threat is. They understand what the threat of this movement is. They understand what the threat this left media, independent media presents to corporate interests. And that's precisely the reason why they're trying to engage in this disciplining operation to defang at least one of the tools that the left flank has. The threat I represent is not to the American population. The threat I represent is to profit seekers that want to paywall healthcare, that want to side with the bosses and stiff workers. That's the real threat. The threat is to their profit margins. That's it. It's not a threat to you.
The economy. It strains credulity to suggest that it's the Republicans here are deflecting from the economy to talk about Israel. The DSA candidates talk about Israel obsessively,
I didn't say that. I mean, look, I didn't say that. I guess what I'm asking is,
well, here's how El Sayed
what's
makes
the
the
Republican message on the economy to counter the El Sayed message on the economy, which is that we're trying to put more money in your pockets. We're going to do so by taxing the rich, by doing all these different things. What's the other argument?
Step B, money in your pocket. Yeah, so the Republicans do have an economic message. That's a problem. The El Sayed economic message.
It's funny, by the way, they can't get the cancellation quote. Ironically enough, the right wing and Politico can't get the cancellation quote that they want after they've like battered every single fucking candidate in the head and bludgeoned every single candidate in the fucking head with like condemn us on. They're just going to fake it. They're going to turn around and they're going to realize they're not getting the quote that they want. So then they're going to fake it. They're going to be like, oh, these candidates are distancing themselves from Hasan. They actually do oppose. Hasan Piker. They fucking hate the things that he represents. Okay? So that's what they're going to do next. And Politico has done a piece of this already. Abdul said disavows Hasan Piker's 9/11 comments. And people are immediately tuning into that frequency and going, that said better late than never is in fact correct. Do you see? Like that's the ultimate goal here. The ultimate goal here is to basically say, oh, there is real disarray amongst the base. There is no disarray amongst the base, especially when it comes to the issues that these politicians represent, these candidates, these insurgent candidates represent. People are united behind these issues. Republicans are trying to drive a wedge between candidates and the platform to the best of their ability. And the wedge that they're using is me. That's it. There is no chaos or confusion. There is no chaos or confusion inside of the base. They are all united behind these policies. And you will see by the time we get out of the midterms. Okay? Like, look, and it works. It even works for people who have been long-term subscribers. What about Bernie talking about how he's not comfortable about the relationship between you two? That's not what Bernie Sanders said. But you saw one aspect of the quote that was clipped, and you thought Bernie was saying, yeah, I don't actually like that Hasan and Abdul are stumping together. He didn't say that. He said he doesn't like the comment. And then he followed up with, I think you have to look at the totality of what Hasan says, and it's very clear that people resonate with the message. Do you understand? No, I was bringing that up as an example. No, that's what they're doing. Dude, that was the point. Everyone says the same thing, okay? I do not like the 9/11 comment. I do not agree with the 9/11 comment, right? That is what everyone says. And then there's a but. But no one wants to follow the but. This is exactly what happened with Zoran as well. Oh, Zoran Mamdani disavowed Hasan Piker. He didn't. He disavowed the statement on 9/11. But it's not an unexpected sentiment. I have disavowed the 9/11 comment. You know? Yeah, I think that Chatter was using that as an example of a disavowal being clipped out of context. Exactly. Yeah, the follow through on that is, look, we don't agree with the 9/11 comment. Having said that, it's clear that there is something that is resonating with the base, right? I'm confused, so it's your fault because you didn't stump for Kamala, but now it's your fault that you are stumping with progressives? Yeah, at a certain point, you got to realize that these guys only want to fucking take out left media. If it wasn't me, it'd be someone else, okay? If I wasn't seen as this like magnet for hatred, as a representative of like, as representative being the most prominent critic of Israel and the most prominent leftist platform, it would be someone else. They'd be going after someone else. And sure, I take ownership over the way that I use language, the instances where I say things that are, definitely hyperbolic. I get that. I understand that. I'm an entertainer at the end of the day, which is what I was trying to explain in the Rolling Stone piece as well. And I try to make it as like dynamic as possible. And I think there's a reason for why it has resonated with a lot of people, right? But ultimately, yeah, I'm tanking all the fucking aggro right now. But if it wasn't me, it'd be Kyle Kalinske, for example. And if it wasn't Kyle Kalinske and they took him out, it would be Majority Report. They would say the Majority Report is also engaging in like Hamas defense or anything like that. That's it. AOC responded to this perfectly. Okay.
Yeah,
What's
yada,
the other-
yada,
what's
yada.
the other
Step A,
argument?
step B,
What's the
money in
other
your
argument?
pocket. Yeah, so the Republicans do
Yeah,
have
I
an
mean,
economic message. That's
it
the
is what
problem.
it is.
The El Said economic message, I think, is really easy for Republicans to swat away because he himself brings it back to Israel. He himself says that foreign aid,
Well,
the
isn't that-
minuscule,
Yeah.
economically
Isn't
illiterate
that-
argument
but
that
isn't
foreign
that
aid is taking money
essentially
out of
what
your
Donald
pocket
Trump has
is his
done
case.
for the last 10 years, which is to say, we need to end these foreign wars. Let's stop funding war in Ukraine because
it
it's
is
taking
the-
money out
But
of
that's
your
a
pocket.
stupid argument.
I'm just saying,
Democrats
it is-
should
but it is-
stop
but-
it
but
because
it
it's
is-
still
it is-
stupid in their mouths too.
It is the beacon by which the America First movement got its footing. It is legitimately the bedrock of it. And by the way, you know as well as I do that there is a huge far-right insurgency that believes all of the same things in that kind of horseshoe. If it's Tucker, if it's Alex Jones, all these people that you guys loved a little while ago, but when they started becoming
They're not getting elected. They're not getting elected. They're not getting real elected to the U.S. Senate.
When they start to become critical,
not me.
what I'm telling you is this, though. Number one, when I see him talk, what he does is he takes questions that he's asked, like on this network. Every time he's on this network, it's not the economy. It's Israel. And so he goes, let me kind of connect these two ideas about why I think that we should take money and not give it to Israel, not give it to any foreign power, and reinvest it into our cities and our states. So a lot of times he is making an economic message out of questions he's being asked because we're obsessed with litigating Israel every single time he comes up.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Next for us, now.
All right. So yeah, let's get to the Sunday shows. There's a massive amount of commentary on here. AOC did a 20-minute